Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. The goal is to be transparent and unbiased. This is not an endorsement. It's a privilege to serve you. Let's get into it. Hey guys, what's going on? So I am here with Andrew of Vintage Electric and the Vintage Electric Roadster, kind of like the platform that started it all. So yeah, tell me a little bit about it, Andrew.
Yeah, so this is the next evolution of what our tracker bike started out as, where we still sell our tracker bike. It has a little less range than this pack. It doesn't have the suspension fork. This bike, you know, we pull a lot of inspiration from old hot rods, old motorsport, old race cars, racing motorcycles on road. And it has the suspension fork, our big battery. You can get up to a 75-mile range, and it's just an awesome bike to rip around on the roads.
Great. I'm excited to show you about all the details, but even more, I'm excited to show you what it does on the road. It feels great. So let's go ahead and jump into the specs. All right, so the first thing that you're going to see of this bike is just how gorgeous it is. I mean, it has a really good look to it, the way that it has the glossy black with kind of like the matte on the silver here on the front fork, as well as the black tires. I mean, this is a really good looking bike. If you want a bike that you're going to get noticed in, then this is going to be this is going to be one of the best. I mean, it has a color matched fender in the back. You have kind of like the two-tone paint on the frame. The chain guard even has kind of like the same glossy finish as does the frame, with a nice cursive over here for the branding right there, as well as, you know, the nice logo straight in the front. Normally this isn't what I start a review with, is talking about the look of the bike, but they really got that down pat, especially with the brown accents on the leather. You have that on these rings here that are actually meant to protect the frame from getting nicked by the fork. That's what it's for when you turn the handlebars all the way over. As well, these are actually some custom grips made by Vintage Electric with the leather rings on them. And after a little bit, I mean, this is still a brand new bike. After they get worn in a little bit, they perfectly match the leather on the seat as well as those rings on the fork. So this is a really, really good looking bike, a very striking bike. The way that it's got everything all put together, and also the headlight, nice big front headlight that actually is a headlight. It's not just a decoration. It powers up, and I'll get to more details about that in the electric section of the review. But yeah, I mean, one of the best selling points about this bike is just how gorgeous it is. I mean, yeah, it's a great bike. But let's talk about how it rides. Let's talk about what the specifications are. So we'll go ahead and start with the mechanical system here. So you have a 39 tooth chain ring up front. So that's how many teeth are on this ring here. You can switch it out. There are these little provisions here if you want to switch out to a different set. But in all honesty, this is about the biggest you're going to be able to fit into this area. And that's fine, because this bike comes back into a 16 tooth ring in the back here. So there's no derailleur system, there's no indexer. It's just a single speed system with a freewheel on it that feels pretty good when you're pedaling it. And I'll get into the pedal assist system in a little bit. But the single speed cleans everything up really nice. I mean, again, going back to the look, it looks pretty good. You don't have like the derailleur kind of hanging down over there. You don't have like additional gears or posts or wires coming out. It looks super, super clean. And this one has a stainless steel 170 millimeter crank on either side, as well as this stainless steel pedal right here that's made by MKS. There are reflectors for this pedal. They're just not clicked in here at the moment. So it is compliant. This is a safety compliant pedal that you're gonna get on your bike. Coming on with the rest of the mechanical system, on the opposite side here, you have the dual piston brakes for the hydraulic disc brakes. So this system has a 180 millimeter rotor on the rear, and it has a 203 millimeter rotor on the front. Most of your stopping power is up at the front of the bike, so they have a larger rotor up front, smaller rotor in the back. And this is something that they have personally tested. They were telling me that they tested one that was equal on both sides, but it just didn't feel right. And so they wanted to kind of balance things out by putting more stopping power up in the front of the bike with a larger rotor. So it's very intentional. In the back here, you do have a single walled rim here. That's 26 inch rim, as well as the 12 gauge spokes in the back, 14 gauge in the front. So these are a little bit thicker of a spoke, and they're done that to intentionally handle the extra torque that's coming from this motor that's right here built into the hub. They have a stainless steel horizontal dropout that's built into the frame of the bike right here. Again, that's to handle the extra motor torque along with the tensioner in here, and some pretty thick axles here. That's probably a 19 millimeter axle nut in the back there. So this is a very nice and stout system, very sturdy, that you have in the back wheel. In the front of the bike, again, this is the 203 millimeter rotor. You have the 14 gauge spokes, a little bit smaller spokes up here, 36 in all in the front as well as in the back. So this is a pretty good system overall. The front fork is another cool part about the bike and the look, but it also has a lot of function to it as well. It's a 60 millimeter travel on this inverted fork. Now it's called inverted because the internal part is down here at the bottom, the external part is here on the top, and it kind of compresses over into that section here. Most of the time you see that switched, where the skinnier section is up on the top. But they do that quite intentionally for the aesthetic, to make it look good, but it's also really strong. It provides a really strong system for handling the extra weight of this vehicle. So by the way, while we're talking about some of the mechanical components, this bicycle, all said and done, is about 86 pounds. 86 pounds totally, with the battery and the motor installed on the bike. Now, of course, the motor can come off. You know, you undo these, you take off the tensioner, and you can slide the motor on and off if you want to change the tire. That's actually not terribly hard. The battery, on the other hand, is not meant to come off. It is attached with some disconnects in here, so it can be removed for service. It can be done, but it's not something you want to do every night. It would be quite the chore. So this battery in itself is pretty heavy because it's carrying the battery, which is a 48 volt, 23.5 amp hour battery, which is a lot. That's a big battery. It's double what I've seen a lot of electric bikes carry. But it's carrying that big battery in here, as well as the controller, the BMS, and some other electronics. So this is kind of like a electronics hub, I guess, if you want to call it that. And that's one reason for the weight, but it's all right here in the center of the bike. That's one thing to notice, is that of course you have the big die cast frame for all of those electronics. Boom, there it is in the center of the bike. You do have some weight in the back with this motor here, of course, but nonetheless you have a large section of the electronics right there in the center of the bike that's very sturdily attached with some pretty big brackets right here. So continuing on with the electric system, you do have the Promax Lucid brakes. It's kind of like a 4-finger lever for the hydraulic disc brakes. I'll talk about this in the electric system, interestingly enough. These are actually a custom stainless steel handlebar that's made for Vintage. Has their own custom low rise and their own custom kind of back sweep to it, as well as the entire stem area. So this is all their custom design that's put onto this fork, as well as the crown of the fork has this little provision for the headlight that's made specific for Vintage Electric, and that's pretty cool. They have some other custom parts in it as well, aside from like the battery pack, of course. But yeah, it's really thought out the way that they have this entire bike set up. So I think that about does it for the mechanical system. Let's go ahead and jump into the electric system, and I will start with the brakes. So these brakes, you would have a pretty clean look to them. They have an integrated system for regenerative braking. So inside of this brake handle, well, perhaps it's in the handle, maybe it's a little bit further down, but inside of the brakes, when you press on the brakes, that's actually engaging the system for regenerative braking. And with a heavy vehicle like this, again, weighing in close to, yeah, it's 86 pounds. With a heavy vehicle like this, capturing that energy in regenerative braking makes a lot more sense. If you're a roadie and you have a really tiny bike with really tiny tires, then your regenerative braking isn't doing too much. But if you have a big heavy bike like this, it makes a lot more sense. It saves you a lot on brake pads, which is a really good benefit. And it also does kick in to add a little bit of energy to the battery pack. And it is measurable in some cases. When you're going down a steep hill, you can actually see the battery bar kind of going up as you're descending down, holding on to those brakes to engage the system, from what I'm told. It's actually an intelligent system in the sense that it's not going to overcharge your battery the way that it would throw the energy back in. It's not going to overcharge your battery either from full, going past what it should be, or going too fast. So it's a pretty intelligent system, the way that that regenerative braking actually works. One of the few times that I've seen it implemented in that kind of manner, so, which is great. So continuing on with the electric system, let's go ahead and turn on the display. and tell you a little bit about that. So it's a pretty streamlined display that you have here that's programmed specifically for the vintage bikes. On the top left, you got the battery power that's shown on 5 bars here. On the bottom right, you have your speed. On the lower left, you have your pedal assist level that is also capping the motor output. So it goes up to level 5, which is the 750 watts of output that this system can produce. And of course, you can turn it all the way down into 0 and just pedal the bike like normal. One other thing that I forgot to mention was the lights. So this bike is equipped with both a headlight and a tail light. So in the bottom of the saddle right here, connected through the internal wiring of the seat post, you have this 5 LED supernova light that is internally wired into both the battery pack here, so you don't have to switch out any batteries or anything. It's also wired into the front light. They turn on at the same time, and they turn on with either the display up front, where you can press and hold the plus button, and that will turn the lights on or off. So right now it's turned on, and you can kind of see that one shining on. Let's go ahead and turn it off real quick. You can kind of see the difference there. So that's the front light, and the rear light, even though it looks small, actually has a fair amount of bite to it. Here we go. So that's in broad daylight. I mean, we're kind of in the shade, but one other cool feature about these lights is that they turn on even if you're in a dark place. So we were riding underneath a tunnel, and then we came back out into the daylight again, and the lights stayed on. And that's actually pretty cool that they turn on automatically. I really like that feature. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump on the bike and take it for a ride and show you what it does. All right, so we're riding the Vintage Roadster again today. Kind of ran out of time yesterday, but yeah, it's been really fun so far. I actually got the chance to take it out on this parking lot area right next to the San Jose airport. So you'll probably hear an airplane coming in for a landing any second now. But yeah, it's a nice long road to have a chance to kind of stretch out and kind of see what the Roadster can do on the pavement, because it feels really comfy. When you're going fast, when you're making a turn, and that's not an easy thing to do for an electric bicycle to feel good going fast and making a turn at the same time. But it really does. I mean, these tires make a big difference. This bike is pretty similar to the Scrambler, but I gotta say that this feels better on the road. It really does. You feel more like you have more of a turning radius, like more of a tight turning radius, I'd say, on account of the tires there. Oh, there comes a plane. But you have a better turning radius. It feels like you got a better turning radius. It feels like you're not going to tip, you know, when you're turning the bike really sharp. It feels like you have more control over it when you're on the road, and that's perfect. I mean, this bike is kind of like the natural evolution of the vintage electric bicycles in the first place. So it kind of takes advantage of all of their history and everything that they've learned. It comes together in a really nice package, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So let me show you some of the parts of the bike. Let me show you the fork. I don't know, it's going to be kind of hard for me to try to initiate the fork because it's yeah, I'm holding a camera, but we'll see what we can do. So you'll see it's a reverse fork. So the inner portion is kind of like on the bottom of the fork down there by the hub, and it's definitely a motorcycle style. But yeah, the fork really is pretty good. I mean, it kind of kicks in when you want it to, and you definitely want it to because this is a heavier bicycle. It's very thought out because this stronger fork, it's quite necessary, I'd say, for a vehicle of this size, and especially the geometry where you're kind of a little bit forward on the handlebars, because otherwise you'd be feeling all of that weight yourself. So yeah, definitely good design choice right there. Let me show you the motor kind of kicking in. I know we kind of did the shot coming down at the bottom bracket area, but let me show you the motor specifically. Let's go ahead and kick it into high gear. We'll probably wind up going somewhere around 33 miles an hour, which is pretty fast. So let's go ahead and do it. Okay, we got to about 32 miles an hour right there. One thing that's going to be kind of tough to explain, but I can definitely tell you about it, is the regenerative braking. So this bike does have regenerative braking, and it's done very well in the sense that you don't really notice. I think that if you gave this bike to someone, even someone who rides electric bikes, they might say, oh, the brakes kind of feel funny at a low speed, but that's about it. They probably wouldn't be able to discern that it does have regenerative braking because it feels that smooth. And that's a very sincere compliment, because the older systems, you know, you got to flip a button or a switch or something, and they're very, you know, they're not nearly as intuitive. But this one's great. All you got to do is just press on the brakes and they engage. And then when you're going slow at about, I'd say 8 miles an hour, maybe a little bit less, that's when the regen kind of kicks off and it goes into the mechanical mode at that point. And when it goes into the mechanical braking, you can kind of feel the difference between the two. You know, there's kind of a changeover there, and the bike feels like it, you know, just ever so slightly kind of lurches. You got to kind of pay attention to it. But I actually take that as kind of a good thing, because it kicks in on the regular mechanical brakes only when they are less likely to really be of any kind of danger to you. Otherwise, it's using the regenerative braking side, and it puts a little more energy back into the battery pack, and it works better. It just works better. So it saves you a little bit on brake pads. If you're going down from like a pretty high climb, which I hope to do soon with the other vintage electric bike in an upcoming review, then it will actually give you some measurable amount of battery power back. But if you're just kind of in stop and go on a commute home, then it's going to be kind of tough to notice the differences that it's putting back into the battery pack, unless you're looking at the brake pads, because it saves you a lot of hassle on replacing the brake pads, especially with a heavy bike like this. So that's a very good thing. Okay guys, so we are on the Vintage Electric Roadster. I've got it cranked up to level 5 pedal assist, and I am gonna slam down on that high-speed throttle. We're actually in race mode, so let's see how fast we can get this baby. That was great. I got to about 30 miles an hour on that. That was fun. So one thing I did forget to mention on the review that you kind of saw here a little bit is pedal lock. So this bike does have the kickstand right in the center of the bike, and as a result, when you're pressing the bike backwards, say if you're moving it around your garage, then the cranks can actually strike onto the pedal right there, and then your bike kind of locks up and doesn't move back anymore. Let me show you. So here I am just pressing the bike backwards, and then clunk, kind of gets locked into position, and now no matter how hard I pull on it, it's not going to go anywhere because the kickstand is kind of in the way of pulling it backwards. You know, it's not something that's hard to fix. Kind of pick up the bike, get the pedal out of the way, remove the kickstand, and then you're good to go from there. But nonetheless, you know, it does kind of lock you up after a while. It's a hard habit to kind of remember at first. Okay, so we're back here at Vintage Electric Home Base. It's actually been a really fun ride. I'm glad that I got to share this bike with you, because it definitely feels really different. It feels really nice and sturdy when you're on the road. Definitely has an amazing look, and you guys can see that for yourself. But yeah, it feels great too. So if you want to check out the full review and the write-up with all the specifications for this bike, you go to ElectricBikeReview.com, where you can also compare this with other vintage electric, as well as some other bikes and brands. And you can participate in the forums, ask us a question, kind of hang out over there if you'd like to. Thanks for watching, guys. Ride safe.